It's a medical crisis. Joe Manganiello. He has reportedly been hospitalized for appendicitis after his appendix burst, according to published reports.
Joe Manganiello, one of Hollywood's strongest-looking stars, built a career defined by power, confidence, and an almost superhuman physique. Admired for his roles, his discipline, and what seemed like the perfect life, few imagined he was secretly fighting a devastating mystery illness that nearly destroyed everything he had worked for. For years, he suffered in silence while the world saw only success. Now, at 49, Joe is finally revealing the painful truth. What really happened, and how did this hidden battle change his life forever? This is the story. The secret Joe Manganiello hid. For years, Joe Manganiello carried a secret that even many of his biggest fans never suspected. While audiences watched him continue to act, attend premieres, travel, give interviews, and appear confident in public, a very different reality existed behind closed doors. The actor, admired for his remarkable physique and seemingly endless energy, was quietly fighting one of the most difficult battles of his life. Yet, instead of speaking openly about what he was going through, Joe chose to suffer in silence, sharing the painful truth only with a small circle of close family members and trusted friends. Keeping such a life-changing struggle hidden was far from easy. Day after day, he continued showing up for work and maintaining the public image people expected to see, even as his health challenges grew more serious. Few people realized that every appearance, every project, and every moment in the spotlight often came while he was dealing with physical pain, emotional exhaustion, and the uncertainty of an illness that doctors struggled to explain. To everyone else, he appeared to have everything under control. In reality, he was simply doing everything he could to keep moving forward. That silence lasted for nearly a decade. During those years, countless rumors surrounded different parts of his life, from career changes to personal relationships, but almost no one knew the much deeper struggle unfolding behind the scenes. Joe later explained that he had deliberately kept his health battle private, choosing to face the challenge away from public attention while searching for answers and trying to regain his strength. Then, in June 2026, everything changed. As he introduced his memoir and began speaking publicly about his experience, Joe finally revealed the story he had carried for so many years. He described the mysterious illness as the hardest chapter of his life, saying it was an experience he would never wish on anyone. The years of unanswered questions, failed treatments, surgeries, and constant uncertainty had tested him in ways few people could imagine. But Joe made it clear that his decision to speak out was never about seeking sympathy or drawing attention to himself. Instead, he hoped that by sharing the darkest period of his life, he could encourage others facing unexplained illnesses not to lose hope. He wanted people living with chronic pain or searching for a diagnosis to understand that they were not alone, and that even when answers seem impossible to find, it is still worth continuing the search. After years of silence, Joe chose to transform his personal struggle into a message of resilience, hope, and perseverance for anyone fighting a battle that the rest of the world cannot see. Joe Manganiello recently opened up about the mysterious illness he battled for nearly a decade, a struggle he kept hidden from the public. But how did it begin? Were there any warning signs? Was it an ordinary illness or something far more frightening? And how much did it change his life? Let's find out. The unseen beginning of the health crisis. Around 2016, Joe Manganiello seemed to be living the kind of life many people only dream about. His acting career was flourishing, his marriage was attracting admiration, and he had earned a reputation as one of Hollywood's fittest and most disciplined stars. Whether he was appearing on the big screen, walking the red carpet, or sharing glimpses of his life in public, Joe looked confident, healthy, and in complete control. To fans, and even many people close to the entertainment industry, it appeared that everything was going exactly as planned. But behind that picture of success, something deeply troubling had already begun. Without warning, Joe started noticing unusual health problems that refused to go away. At first, they may have seemed like isolated issues that could be treated or eventually disappear on their own. Instead, the symptoms continued to grow stronger, more unpredictable, and increasingly difficult to ignore. As days turned into weeks and weeks became months, it became painfully clear that he was facing something far more serious than an ordinary illness. Doctors eventually believed he was battling a complex autoimmune-related condition, but understanding exactly what was happening proved far more difficult than anyone expected. The illness attacked several important parts of his body, including his skin, thyroid, eyes, lungs, and digestive system. It was as though his own immune system, which is meant to protect the body from harm, had begun working against him instead. For someone whose career depended not only on talent, but also on physical strength, endurance, and confidence, the experience was both frightening and deeply frustrating. Determined to find answers, Joe refused to give up. Over the following years, he sought help from some of the world's most respected medical specialists, hoping that one of them would finally uncover the cause of his mysterious condition. He underwent extensive examinations, countless medical tests, and repeated consultations with experts from different fields. Every appointment offered a new possibility and a fresh sense of hope that the mystery would finally be solved. Yet, the answers never came. Despite the experience and knowledge of the doctors treating him, no one could clearly explain what had triggered the illness or why it had suddenly taken hold of his body. The uncertainty became almost as painful as the disease itself. Not knowing what he was fighting created a constant sense of fear and frustration. That long search for answers marked the beginning of a difficult journey that Joe chose to keep hidden from the public, carrying the weight of his private battle for years while the world continued believing everything in his life was perfectly fine. Joe noticed strange symptoms that made him seek help from medical specialists. But did the treatments they prescribed improve his condition, or did they make his suffering worse? And what did this long battle truly cost him? Was it only financial, or did the price extend far beyond money? Let's uncover the astonishing details. The medical nightmare Joe Manganiello endured. As the search for answers continued, Joe Manganiello reached a point where simply waiting was no longer an option. With his health continuing to decline and no clear explanation for what was happening to his body, he and his medical team decided to pursue stronger and more aggressive forms of treatment. Every new recommendation carried the promise that it might finally slow the illness, ease his symptoms, or give him a chance to reclaim the life he had once known. Like anyone facing a serious medical crisis, Joe held on to hope that the next treatment would be the breakthrough he had been desperately waiting for. Sadly, that breakthrough never came. Instead of bringing lasting relief, many of the treatments created new problems that made an already difficult situation even harder to endure. Joe later revealed that he had been prescribed powerful biologic medications, often used to treat complex autoimmune diseases by changing the way the immune system behaves. Doctors believed they might help control his condition, but the results were devastating. Rather than calming the illness, the medications reportedly intensified many of his symptoms and triggered severe side effects that affected him for years. What was meant to help him recover only added another layer of suffering to an already exhausting battle. As his condition continued to worsen, Joe made the difficult decision to undergo several major surgeries and invasive medical procedures. None of them were easy choices, but each one offered the possibility of buying more time and slowing the progression of a disease that still had no clear explanation.
Joe Manganiello not only dropped out of his upcoming miniseries, reports now claim Joe was in the hospital for a burst appendix and had to undergo emergency surgery.
Every operation came with risks, uncertainty, and long periods of recovery. Yet he continued moving forward because giving up was never an option. There were moments when the physical toll became almost unbearable. Joe has shared that there were times when he became so weak he could barely stand or walk. He spent months relying on heavy medication while battling relentless episodes of chronic pain that disrupted nearly every part of his daily life. Even simple tasks that most people take for granted became enormous challenges. Perhaps one of the most life-altering moments came when his fight for survival reportedly required a life-saving organ amputation. The procedure permanently changed his body and served as a painful reminder of just how serious his condition had become. It also forced him to confront a heartbreaking possibility. Yet while all of this was happening, the public saw something entirely different. Fans continued watching Joe appear confident, composed, and successful, unaware that behind the cameras, he was quietly enduring what he would later describe as the most painful and difficult chapter of his entire life. Joe explained that as he received more prescription medications for his mysterious illness, his condition became increasingly complicated. But was there an indication of the illness in Joe's early life? Or had the struggles he faced early in life prepared him to endure this devastating battle? Now let's dive into the setbacks that built Joe's unbreakable determination. The early struggles that prepared Joe for the fight. Long before doctors, hospitals, and unanswered medical questions entered his life, Joe had already learned that unexpected setbacks can sometimes open the door to entirely new opportunities. Looking back, many of the experiences that shaped his younger years would unknowingly prepare him for the resilience he would one day need. Born on December 28, 1976, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Joe was raised in the nearby suburb of Mount Lebanon, where he quickly developed a reputation as a talented and determined athlete. Throughout high school, sports were at the center of his life. He served as captain of his football, basketball, and volleyball teams and competed at the varsity level in all three. At that stage, it seemed almost certain that athletics would play a major role in his future. His competitive spirit, strong work ethic, and natural leadership made him stand out both on and off the field. But Joe's interests extended beyond sports. During his senior year, he discovered another passion after landing the role of Judd Fry in his school's production of Oklahoma. He also spent time working with his school's television studio, often borrowing cameras and equipment so he could write, direct, and film short projects with friends. Without realizing it, those creative experiences were planting the seeds for a future career in entertainment. Then, everything changed. A series of serious sports injuries, including a torn medial collateral ligament suffered during a varsity football game, forced Joe to step away from the athletic path he had always imagined. While recovering, he began asking himself difficult questions about what he truly wanted to do with his life. That period of uncertainty led him to audition for the prestigious Carnegie Mellon University School of Drama. Unfortunately, his first application was rejected. For many people, that disappointment might have marked the end of the dream. For Joe, it became another reason to work even harder. He enrolled at the University of Pittsburgh, continued studying theater, sharpened his acting skills, and refused to let one rejection define his future. A year later, he applied to Carnegie Mellon again. This time, he was accepted and awarded a scholarship. Joe graduated in the year 2000 with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in acting before traveling to New York and Los Angeles for professional auditions. Those opportunities eventually introduced him to agents, managers, and industry professionals who helped launch the career that would later make him a familiar face through projects such as Spider-Man, True Blood, and the Magic Mike films.
Deathstroke is actually coming to the big screen, and Joe Manganiello will be behind the mask. The True Blood and Magic Mike star has been cast for the role opposite Ben Affleck in the planned standalone film.
Looking back, every setback had quietly prepared him for an even greater battle that still lay ahead. Beyond the experiences that built Joe's resilience and prepared him to face life's challenges, how frightening was the mysterious illness he has finally opened up about? Was he ever able to determine what caused it or why it happened to him? And how far did he go in his search for healing? Let's uncover the emotional details. The unexpected path Joe Manganiello chose. After years of living with uncertainty, Joe Manganiello reached a turning point that he never expected. He had done everything doctors had asked of him. He had attended countless medical appointments, undergone major surgeries, taken powerful medications, and followed treatment plans with the hope that each new step would finally bring lasting relief. While many of those treatments helped him survive the immediate dangers of his illness, they still failed to answer the one question that mattered most. Why had this happened in the first place? As the years passed, the absence of clear answers became increasingly difficult to accept. The illness had changed nearly every part of his life. Yet even some of the world's leading specialists could not fully explain what had triggered it or how to stop it completely. Living with that uncertainty was emotionally exhausting. Every new treatment came with fresh hope, but also the possibility of another disappointment. Eventually, Joe realized that simply waiting for medicine to explain everything might never be enough. Rather than giving up, he decided to broaden his search in ways he never would have imagined before becoming ill. He remained committed to working with medical professionals, but he also became willing to explore ideas that existed outside the boundaries of conventional Western medicine. It was a decision born not from desperation alone, but from a genuine desire to understand his condition from every possible angle. That search introduced him to meditation, spiritual practices, shamans, ancient traditions, pagan rituals, and other unconventional approaches to healing. These experiences challenged many of the assumptions he had once held and encouraged him to look beyond physical symptoms alone. Instead of viewing them as magical solutions or replacements for medical treatment, Joe saw them as additional tools that might help him better understand himself, his illness, and the emotional weight he had been carrying for so many years. As time went on, his journey became about much more than trying to repair a body damaged by disease. It evolved into a deeper search for meaning, balance, and inner peace. The illness had forced him to slow down, ask difficult questions, and rethink many of the beliefs he had held throughout his life. In many ways, the greatest transformation was no longer taking place inside a hospital or operating room. It was happening within him. What had begun as a desperate search for a cure gradually became a journey of personal discovery. Although the physical battle was far from over, Joe found himself gaining something he had not expected. Joe explored unconventional ways to get to the root of his illness and find the best path to healing. But what was one of the most significant steps he took? What did he discover during his search? Could he have uncovered something completely unexpected? If so, what was it? Let's uncover the astonishing details. The unexpected journey into Joe's family past. As Joe Manganiello searched for answers about his illness, he uncovered something unexpected. His journey gradually shifted from understanding his health to exploring his family history. What began as a search for medical answers became a deeply personal quest to discover his roots and the generations that shaped his identity. A major turning point came in February 2023, when Joe appeared on PBS's Finding Your Roots. During the program, researchers uncovered astonishing information about his ancestry, revealing family stories that had remained hidden for generations. But for Joe, the television episode was not the end of the journey. In many ways, it was only the beginning. Curious to learn more, he continued researching long after filming had ended. He hired professional historians to help investigate unanswered questions, expanded his family tree, completed additional DNA testing, and reached out to relatives he had never known existed. With every discovery, another piece of his family's story came into focus, helping him build a clearer picture of where he truly came from. Among the most powerful discoveries were the stories of ancestors whose lives were marked by extraordinary hardship and incredible resilience. Joe learned more about his maternal great-grandmother, Rose Darakjian, who survived the Armenian genocide despite suffering unimaginable personal loss. Her story became a powerful reminder of the strength and determination that had been passed down through generations of his family.
Actor Joe Manganiello had a family mystery. A woman named Rose Darakjian was a survivor of the Armenian genocide.
On another branch of his family tree, he also uncovered African-American ancestors whose lives reflected remarkable perseverance through some of history's greatest struggles, revealing a rich heritage that had remained unknown for much of his life. The more Joe learned, the more he realized that his family's history was not simply a collection of names, dates, and historical records. It was a story of survival, sacrifice, courage, and hope. Those discoveries gave new meaning to the challenges he himself was facing. Instead of seeing his illness as an isolated struggle, he began viewing it as part of a much larger story of resilience that stretched back through generations. What had started as a search for medical answers had quietly transformed into something far more personal. By uncovering the truth about his ancestry, Joe found something that years of medical appointments could never provide: a deeper sense of identity, belonging, and purpose. Understanding where he came from helped him better understand who he was. In searching for his roots, Joe discovered that his family's history was filled with stories of struggle, survival, and overcoming unimaginable odds. But how did these discoveries help him during his own battle? Did they bring him comfort and hope, or did they leave him with a scar in his heart? Let's find out. The discovering that changed how Joe saw himself. As Joe Manganiello uncovered more about his family's remarkable past, he began to realize that the journey had transformed him in ways that went far beyond his physical recovery. What had started as an effort to better understand his illness gradually became an emotional and deeply personal experience that changed the way he viewed his own life. The more he learned about the people who came before him, the more he understood that their stories of courage, sacrifice, and survival had become part of his own story as well. For years, Joe had searched for answers about what was happening inside his body. But through his growing knowledge of his ancestry, he discovered something equally important: a stronger sense of identity. Reflecting on what he had learned, Joe explained that the experience made him feel grounded in a way he had never felt before. He compared it to finally becoming a tree with deep roots, instead of one constantly wondering where it truly belonged. It was a powerful image that captured how meaningful the discoveries had become. For the first time, he felt connected not only to his present life, but also to generations of family members whose lives had shaped his own. Those discoveries also changed the way he thought about hardship. Instead of seeing suffering as something that had suddenly appeared in his own life, Joe began recognizing that many of his ancestors had faced unimaginable challenges long before he was born. Some survived war, displacement, persecution, and devastating personal loss, yet they found the strength to continue living and building new lives. Their resilience became a source of inspiration during his own difficult journey, reminding him that perseverance had always been woven into his family's history. As his understanding deepened, Joe felt a growing desire to honor that legacy. He strengthened his connection to his Armenian heritage, became more involved in causes that support the Armenian community, and continued researching the remarkable stories of the relatives who came before him. Learning about their lives was no longer simply an academic interest or a family history project. It became a meaningful way of preserving their memory, while also understanding himself more fully. Gradually, Joe realized that his life could no longer be defined solely by illness, pain, or unanswered medical questions. Those experiences would always remain part of his story, but they would not become the whole story. Instead, he chose to define himself by resilience, hope, and the extraordinary strength that had been passed from one generation to the next. In doing so, he found not only a deeper appreciation for his family's past, but also a renewed sense of purpose for his own future. Beyond discovering his roots, which inspired him to stay strong, what other challenges did Joe Manganiello face during his long health battle? And what steps did he take before those struggles completely overwhelmed him? Now, let's uncover how Joe Manganiello rebuilt his life after years of pain, loss, and uncertainty. The private struggle no one saw. As Joe Manganiello continued battling his mysterious illness in private, his personal life was also going through enormous changes. To the public, the headlines focused almost entirely on his relationships, leaving many people unaware that he was carrying a much heavier burden behind the scenes. While fans and the media speculated about his future, Joe was quietly dealing with a health crisis that had already reshaped nearly every part of his life. One of the biggest changes came in July 2023, when Joe and actress Sofia Vergara announced that they had decided to end their marriage after 7 years together. The news immediately captured worldwide attention. As one of Hollywood's most recognizable celebrity couples, their separation quickly became the subject of countless news reports, interviews, and online discussions. When their divorce was officially finalized in February 2024, many people believed they had already heard the biggest story surrounding Joe's life. What they did not know was that an even more difficult story had been unfolding away from the public eye. While the public focused on the end of his marriage, Joe was quietly battling a mysterious illness. Years of medical appointments, treatments, surgeries, and uncertainty had taken a heavy physical and emotional toll, but he chose to keep his health struggles private as he moved forward. As time passed, Joe gradually found reasons to look toward the future again.
Joe Manganiello and Caitlin O'Connor confirming months-long speculation. Joe finding his second shot at love in the wake of heartbreak. The two met soon after he separated from Sofia Vergara.
He began a relationship with actress Caitlin O'Connor, and together they started building a new chapter centered on hope rather than hardship. Their relationship offered Joe the opportunity to focus on healing, stability, and creating a life beyond the difficult years he had endured. By late 2025, the couple made a significant decision that reflected those new priorities. After spending more than 2 decades in Los Angeles, they chose to leave the city behind and settle in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the place where they both had deep family roots and shared childhood connections. For many people, moving across the country might simply mean changing homes. For Joe, however, the decision carried far greater emotional meaning. Returning to Pittsburgh symbolized a fresh start. It allowed him to reconnect with the community that had shaped his early years, while leaving behind a period marked by constant uncertainty, physical pain, and emotional challenges. After years of surviving one obstacle after another, Joe was no longer focused only on overcoming illness. He was finally beginning to rebuild a quieter, more meaningful life, surrounded by familiar places, supportive relationships, and a renewed sense of hope for the future. At a time when Joe needed support the most, his marriage came to an end. Yet, he eventually found love again and began rebuilding his life. But what does Joe's decision to reveal his hidden struggle truly mean? And what lessons can we learn from his journey? Let's find out. Beyond the illness. Looking back on everything he has endured, it becomes clear that Joe Manganiello's story is about far more than a mysterious illness. At first, it may seem like the story of a Hollywood actor battling a devastating health crisis behind closed doors. But the deeper you look, the more you realize it is also a story about resilience, self-discovery, and the remarkable ability of the human spirit to keep moving forward even when life no longer makes sense. For years, Joe appeared to have everything many people dream of achieving. He had built a successful acting career, earned admiration for his dedication and discipline, and was widely recognized as one of Hollywood's strongest and fittest stars. From the outside, his life looked almost perfect. Yet behind that image was a man quietly fighting an invisible battle that very few people knew existed. While audiences applauded his performances and celebrated his success, he was struggling through chronic pain, unanswered medical questions, exhausting treatments, and a future filled with uncertainty. The illness changed much more than his physical health. It challenged his confidence, tested his emotional strength, affected his personal relationships, and forced him to reconsider what truly mattered in life. It taught him that real strength is not measured by muscles or outward appearance, but by the courage to keep going when every day feels uncertain. It also reminded him that some of life's greatest battles are completely invisible to everyone else. Yet, surprisingly, the same journey that brought years of suffering also opened doors he never expected. His search for healing eventually led him to explore his family's remarkable history, uncover long-hidden stories of survival, and develop a deeper appreciation for the generations who came before him. Those discoveries helped him understand that resilience had always been part of his family's legacy. Knowing where he came from gave him a stronger sense of identity and reminded him that he carried within him the strength of people who had overcome unimaginable hardships long before he was born. Today, Joe's decision to finally share his story is about much more than revealing a private struggle. It is about offering hope to others who may be facing illnesses that remain unexplained, living with chronic pain, or searching for answers that seem impossible to find. His experience is a reminder that healing does not always happen as we expect, and that sometimes the greatest transformation comes not from finding every answer, but from discovering a new purpose through the search itself. By breaking nearly a decade of silence, Joe Manganiello has transformed one of the darkest chapters of his life into a powerful message of perseverance, courage, and hope. His journey proves that while illness may change a person's life, it does not have to define it. Sometimes, the hardest battles reveal strengths we never knew we possessed. leading us toward a future richer in meaning than we ever imagined possible. So what do you think about Joe Manganiello's mysterious illness? Could it have come from his complicated family history? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.